All right, let's take a trip down memory lane and relive that incredible first visit to London. The first time we visited London, we were absolutely buzzing with excitement. I mean, this was London, one of the most iconic cities in the world. Of course, we had to start with one of the most famous landmarks, London Bridge. I remember saying, what could be more famous than London Bridge? And there we were, standing on a bridge, admiring the magnificent structure in front of us. Except, guess what? It wasn't London Bridge. Turns out, the bridge we were marveling at was actually Tower Bridge. Yeah, our minds were blown. It's funny because when you hear about these landmarks or see them on TV or online, you think you know them, but nothing compares to being there in person. That's when you realize just how much more you discover by seeing it all with your own eyes. So here's a little background for anyone who's as confused as we were at first. London Bridge, historically speaking, is much older, with the earliest versions dating back to Roman times. But it's had many replacements over the centuries. It's not as picturesque as we imagined. The current version is a pretty modern bridge built in the 1970s. It's functional, but it doesn't have the iconic charm that Tower Bridge does. Tower Bridge, on the other hand, the one behind us, is a stunning piece of Victorian architecture. It's the one you see in all the postcards with its two massive towers connected by high level walkways. Built in the late 1800s, Tower Bridge was designed to ease road traffic while allowing ships to pass through. It's an engineering marvel, especially for its time, and is still operational today. That sight, all blue and white steel against the backdrop of the Thames, was breathtaking. We couldn't stop taking pictures. I'm talking dozens of shots. We had to capture every angle with that iconic bridge in the background. Now, a sunny day in London, that's like hitting the jackpot. London is known for its grey skies and rain, so when we got sunshine, it was as if the city was welcoming us with open arms. Sunshine in London just felt like the perfect pair for tourists like us. We soaked it all in. The sunlight bouncing off the river, lighting up Tower Bridge. Honestly, it was a photographer's dream. Now, if you're planning a visit to London and want to see these iconic landmarks, here are a few tips. First, wear comfortable shoes. You'll do a lot of walking, especially if you're like us and wants to stroll along the River Thames and see everything up close. Also, try to go on a weekday morning to avoid the bigger crowds. If you're lucky enough to get a sunny day like we did, take full advantage and spend as much time outdoors as you can. The light makes all the difference when photographing these landmarks. Another recommendation, while Tower Bridge is an absolute must, don't skip London Bridge just because it's more understated. Crossing it gives you some great views of both the Tower of London and Tower Bridge, and it's a cool way to get a feel of how the city connects its old and new parts. And if you're a history buff, definitely set aside time to tour the Tower of London. We didn't have time on that first trip, but it's on our list for the next time. Let's talk more about this, probably the most iconic landmarks in London, the Tower Bridge. Now, you've probably seen it in countless photos and movies, but let's dive into its history a little. You might be surprised by how much there is to this stunning piece of architecture. Tower Bridge isn't as old as some people think. It was actually completed in 1894. So compared to the other landmarks like the Tower of London, which has been around since the 11th century, Tower Bridge is kind of a baby. But despite its relatively young age, it has become one of London's most recognizable symbols. After our Tower of London photo session, we decided to stroll along the River Thames. There's something magical about walking by the water with the city's history right in front of you. We crossed over to London Bridge, yes, the real one this time, and walked towards the Tower of London. We had a quick coffee stop at this mall along the way and enjoyed a few minutes observing the hustle and bustle of London from this corner. From this side of the river, we got another amazing view of the Tower Bridge and the Tower of London. The sun was just perfectly angled behind us, casting this warm glow over the entire scene. You couldn't have asked for better lighting for photos. I have to say, on a fine day like that, Tower Bridge looked even more magnificent. The way the sunlight danced on the towers and reflected on the water was like something out of a storybook. If you've been to London, you know these sunny days are rare. So when you get one, you cherish it. It felt like London was showing off just for us. Aside from the beauty of the Tower Bridge, we also had a great view of the London skyline from where we were. You could see the towering presence of the Shard, the super modern glass skyscraper that contrasts so sharply with the historic buildings nearby. It's wild how London mixes the old and new so seamlessly. It's a place that's both timeless and always evolving. And I think that's what makes it so special. Speaking of history, the Tower of London was right there, casting its shadow over the river. Even though we didn't have time to go inside, just walking around it was enough to feel the weight of its history. The Tower of London has been standing for nearly 1,000 years. It served as a royal palace, a fortress, a prison, even the home of the crown jewels. You could feel the history just oozing from the ancient stones. It's one of those places where you can imagine the stories it holds. Tales of kings, queens, and famous prisoners. Just standing outside, we felt a deep connection to the country's past. Back in the 19th century, London was booming, and the east side of the city needed another crossing over the River Thames. The thing was, They didn't want to just build a regular bridge that would block the tall ships that needed to sail into the city. So they needed something special, something that would allow boats to pass while still serving as a road bridge. That's when the idea of the Tower Bridge came about. It's a bascule bridge, which means it opens in the middle to let ships through. The word bascule comes from the French word for seesaw, which makes sense because the two sides of the bridge lift up like a giant seesaw to let boats pass underneath. What's really impressive is that back in the day, the bridge was powered by steam. The Victorian engineers who built it designed a hydraulic system that used steam to raise and lower the bridge. Today, it's all run by electricity, but the original mechanisms are still on display in the Tower Bridge engine rooms, which you can visit. Over the years, Tower Bridge has become more than just a functional part of London's infrastructure. It's a symbol of the city. Its blend of practicality and beauty with the drawbridge mechanism and those beautiful towers makes it stand out. It's the kind of landmark that people instantly recognize. London is one of those cities where you can truly feel its centuries-old history with every step you take. The architecture, the cobblestone streets, the landmarks that have stood the test of time, it's all there. But what makes London even more special is how it blends that history with modernity. You've got these ancient castles and bridges side by side with sleek skyscrapers like the Shard, world-class restaurants, and art galleries. It's a city that offers the best of both worlds, and you can appreciate it whether you're into history, culture, or even photography like us. Honestly, that first time in London felt magical. You can read all the guidebooks, watch all the travel shows, but nothing beats being there, soaking up the atmosphere, seeing the landmarks with your own eyes, and experiencing the energy of the city. London is a city that will leave you in awe.